It's Saturday morning. It's a little chilly outside. I'm Mark Sylvester. I'm with Dewey Freeman. We're the Elder Council. Dewey, is it starting to get a little crisp in the air?
It is. In fact, it was high 30s the other
Oh,
night.
that's
So
more than crisp.
we were about 6 or 8 degrees from freezing, which is interesting. My horses are beginning to grow their coats for the winter.
And then how do you keep them warm at night? Do they go into a enclosed What's this? What's this? I don't know. That's not my problem. They're
No, no,
horses.
no,
They're
no. They have it's a walk-in barn, is what it is. I don't lock them in, but there's a shelter they can go into. They go in and out as they need to be. Horses, it's a long story, but horses can stay warm pretty well down to about 10 to 15 below.
10 to 15 below.
Yeah.
Wow. That's how they've lasted tens of thousands of years.
Totally.
Right?
So horses do not digest food the way that we do. When the hay goes in, it's a long story, but the hay begins to ferment in their stomach and their digestive system. That they live off the protein from that fermentation.
Huh. See,
The
learned something this morning.
The fermentation process creates heat.
Right.
And then that goes through the rest of their system. So they have an internal furnace from that fermentation process. If you have a gigantic pile of manure and you stick your hand like 2 or 3 feet into it, it will burn your hand.
It'll burn. It's not just warm, it'll burn. Wow.
It gets that hot. And if one of the biggest things that the main cause of barn fires in the past were big piles of manure.
No kidding.
Doing the spontaneous combustion. Therefore, all manure stays outside for me.
There you go. That's a t-shirt. Keep your manure outside.
Yeah, keep your shit outside.
That's the title of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. We're glad you're here. This week, one of the things that we've talked about the role of the elder, and we've in the past, but I thought what would be really interesting this week is to talk about the role of mentors, and I would like to look at it from, we'll kind of maybe split the time between being a mentor and being mentored. Where would you like to start?
Let's talk about being a mentor, what that means. Because it's different than almost any other role that I know.
The words that, 2 words come to mind for me. Freely give.
Yes. That's really interesting because I recently have had an interaction with a younger man around him wanting to lead and actually wanted to come into us. There is this underlying thread through all of his conversation, both written and verbal, about what he wants to get out of it.
What's in it for him?
Yeah, what's in it for him? When you speak of freely giving, to me, that's a real big deal. When I mentor, I don't expect to get something back.
Exactly.
I don't expect to be paid for it. I don't expect it to be mutual, actually. And I do get satisfaction out of mentoring because of the kindness and that I get to see people grow. And when I'm mentoring, though, it's not transactional. It's not like, well, I'm going to help you with this, and later on you do this for me. That's not
Right.
there. Um,
It took a while for me to figure that out. I didn't. I look at mentoring the same way I look at community service.
yes.
I I would do. I never did. I didn't do community service until I was 45. I'd never done it, and we were acquired by a larger company up in the Silicon Valley, and they at one time one of the bosses said, "What's your community profile look like? What's your visibility in the community?" And I said, we're invisible. We're too busy working." And they go, "Yeah, we're going to help you work on that. We
Hmm.
like our companies to be involved in the community and active." Literally did not have an idea what that meant, and one thing led to another, and I had a mentor. The head of the Chamber of Commerce
Hmm.
was an ex ball player, and he took a liking to me, and I took a liking to him, and that started a 15-year relationship that was
Nice.
spectacular. And he mentored me, but what I learned was, because I was running a business, been an entrepreneur my whole life, I was like, well, what's in it for me in this community service? What do I get in return
Hmm.
for giving my time? And I kind of, it was transactional. I mean, I
Right.
fully show up, right? I fully show up and I'm helpful, but I'm always, there's something back here keeping tally, right?
Yeah. What
You
do I
know,
get out of this? What do I get out of this? What do
and
I?
it wasn't until um, we did our first TEDx, and I remember distinctly driving home, and we were on the phone with Kimberly's mom, and she was just saying how much work we had put into it, hundreds of hours, and it was a huge success. And she said, what do you guys get? Well, I thought about it, and I said, we don't get anything. We're giving.
Hmm.
And it was that specific moment when I truly understood what community service was about, and that was 11 years ago, and been doing TED, ever since. And it's
Hmm.
this idea of giving, putting a stage together for ideas to find flight into the universe. And I very soon thereafter associated mentoring with that,
What's that?
and changed. Like, I want this human to have some benefit, and I want to help guide this human who's not my employee, who's not my child, who's not my partner, who is a human that I care about, and they're coachable, which is part of it.
Hmm.
And they're going to take that coaching, and the world will be better as a result.
So one of the pieces that a little bit ago you mentioned maybe splitting the time between mentoring and being a mentee
Yeah.
is from your view, what does it take to be a mentee?
um
Because what you just said, coachable is a really big deal.
if not the biggest. I'll take a line from Hotel California. We are ready to receive.
Mm. Do you see being a mentee a process of learning
Um,
in that receipt?
uh, that's such a great question, because the um, I'm going to say no. You do learn, but that's not
Mhm.
the. It's not pedagogical. It's not. It's. I'm not there to learn how to do a thing. I'm bringing knowledge to the table. Now I'm learning applied skills, and it's I'm how do I apply that thing? I don't expect to be taught how. Hey, that's on me. I'm going to go find out how to do that thing, and I'm going to learn it. Then I'm going to go work with a master at that, and they're going to your point before we got on the air, you have a master who's, and you're a famous horseman, yet there is someone better. There's always someone better than us
definitely.
who's giving you, just, you already know how to do it. They're just going a little this and that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think the mentor will, at least, I mean, I have a guy that I talk to every Saturday morning, not you, at 10. And I listen to, hey, how'd the week go, and what are you working on? Where's the struggle?
Right on.
And I'm, how did you address that? Did you learn something from that? It's almost like an after action review for the week,
Mm.
and to kind of think of, well, okay, well, what worked? Okay. What
Yeah,
needs work?
that worked, and that
What
didn't
needs
work so
work
well. Hmm.
and what didn't work? And there may only be one thing that didn't work, and we'll spend a few minutes on that. But I want to go back to, well, what worked and why? Why do you think that
Hmm.
worked? Oh, well, I was prepared. I was intentional. I
Uh,
I
Open.
just a ton of different things, like, because what if we focus on the what I teach is, like, if I focus on the negative, then it's just a negative mindset, as opposed to focusing on the positive and just do more positive. Stuff's always going to fail. You're going to have mistakes and all of that. Great. Did you learn something? Great. Okay, let's move on.
uh, as usual, my mind is exploding here. Two pieces. One is for, and Mark, you and I talked a little bit about this my last week. I spent as a student in a keto and horsemanship workshop. I'll spend this next week on the second week of that workshop. Two things. One is, and I was there as a student, not as a teacher. Um, Two is, we talked extensively about openings, creating an opening, creating an opening, creating an opening for each other in the dojo, and whatever we were doing with the keto, but also with our horses, that we were creating openings. Um, the So that's what you're talking about. Is it's like, instead of shutting a door, it's like, if we open a door, we can move through that, versus going no, 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 because we will move through an opening when it's there for us.
Therein, by the way, lies the golden rule of improv,
Yeah, exactly.
which is
The other,
life, by the way.
yes, of the art of improv, because improv, I don't know, I'm not even close to being on the same page as you are around improv.
We have a big show
It's
tonight.
it's it's an art form.
It is.
Yeah.
But back to creating openings, I think
Well,
that's such an important. We've talked about that several times. So go on. How does the mentor create the opening for the mentee?
well, when we create that opening, it's more of an opening than an instruction.
Yes.
And our mentee gets to step into that if they choose. The other part of that, so I was going to tie two pieces together. And this was with the same group. It was probably 2 years ago, might have been 3 years ago. One of the instructors, just, we were walking across toward our horses, and she goes, "I really appreciate you, Dewey, because you're an honest student."
Oh, I've not heard the honest student. Oh, tell me more.
Well, it's that I'm honest about my learning. I'm there to learn. I'm
Yeah.
not there to show what I know.
Right. 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 Right.
I'm not there to show off. I'm not there to, you name it. So my translation is the honest mentee actually allows themselves to step into that opening and explore and experiment.
It is, candidly, it is not easy. Either role is not particularly easy. It has challenges.
Yeah. So, what do you see as a challenge to either role?
One of them, and I work on this all the time, is I don't need to show show off is not the right word, but um, you don't need to chime in. It's like just shut up and listen. Shut
Right.
up and listen. I mean, that's this this time you have with your mentor is so valuable. They treat it, just give it so much respect and status and import and like make it a bigger, whatever you think is a big deal. The fact that you get to work with your mentor, take that times five
Exactly.
and go in with that level of paying attention and respect for that person. By the way, sidebar, mentors don't have to be older than you.
Totally. I agree. When I'm mentoring, if somebody starts telling me stories about, oh, I did this and I did that, and trying to prove something to me, I often will stop. I often will stop the conversation.
What is your, is it a hard stop or is it a gentle stop? I mean, are you pulling the reins up like this, or are you gently nudging your horse?
Well, that's an interesting piece because I'm learning. There have been times in the past where it'll just be a hard stop and be like, we're done. In my life with horses, with teaching, with people, with those people I love, what I actually try to do is redirect because there's energy there. It just needs to be redirected in a different way.
I like that frame a lot, and that comes from your Aikido experience and your horse experience.
Aikido and horsemanship.
Yeah.
Aikido and horsemanship. Because if you do the hard stop, the energy's still there anyway. Go ahead. So,
I just reminded, George Lucas taught us that trick.
keep going.
These are not the droids you seek.
Yeah.
Right. And he got that from martial arts, right? There's that, the redirection, right? Which is, no, just young Padawan, we need to look here. And how, so as a mentor, then that becomes an opportunity to train, but for both of you, right?
Right.
Both in, do you agree?
Totally. And as a mentee, will I allow myself to be directed?
Which gets back to coachability, which may be the
Yes.
single most important trait if you want to understand the science of performance. And human performance and human fulfillment is, are you coachable or directable? That's why, uh, so we've talked about Mike Kimberly often and storytelling school. And one of the things, when we identified her ideal customer or ideal client, it's someone who is either been involved in a team sport, been involved in sport, been in public service or military, because they understand discipline, they understand hard work, they understand how to work together, and they know how to be coached.
Yeah. So how would you, what's, when you, because you've talked about this a couple of times now, what does knowing how to be coached entail? What's that?
Um, it's funny when you ask these questions, I get a picture in my mind of
Hmm.
the answer. And the picture in my mind of the answer is it doesn't matter how many books I've read in the library, there's still more books. I can spend my whole life reading one an hour for the rest of my
Right.
life, and there will still be more books.
More books.
And it is and I don't know if it's being humble, but it's just knowing um, the whole reason I want a mentor is because I'm sharpening my sword. You know, that's what I'm looking for is someone who typically has been there, done that. It's more like a Sherpa. It's a combination
Hmm.
of a Sherpa and a sensei, right in there,
Yeah, put
uh,
together.
right? Who's is like, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and you they collapse time for you because now I don't have to. I can learn from them. Oh, and when I see it, it's like, oh, yep, he said that would happen. And now how am I going to deal with that? He said a couple of different ways, and you do it and you learn from it, and you'll learn your own mistakes or make your own mistakes down the path. But I think that's one of the things about a mentor that's helpful. So if you go into it saying, "Man, I am just dust in the wind. I don't know anything," right? You know, it's like uh, Game of Thrones. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
I never watched the Game of Thrones, so I believe you.
Those who are listening to this right now will know that meme very very well because this girl he falls in love with, you know, he's this, you know, he knows everything. He's the future king. He's Jon Snow, and here's this wilding woman who says, "You don't know anything. Shut up. You don't know anything."
How many of the men listening to this have been told that by a woman?
They're not. She's not wrong.
That is true.
It's not wrong. And I think if you can accept that and not if okay, here it is, I think. If you have enough ego strength to be able to accept that and not let it crush you, then you're on the right path.
I fully agree. So let me add another piece. And this is a little bit of a switch. This will come back around. As you know, as many people know, I've been an educator all of my life. Almost every, not almost, every learning theory boils down to the way that we learn is by trial and error. We try something, it works, we go, great. We try something, it doesn't work, we go, oh. We try something, part of it works, part of it doesn't work. If we allow mentors to truly mentor us, what they're doing is sharing their trial and errors
Yes. Yeah.
with us so that we don't have to go do what they did
Yeah.
the way that they did it. We don't have to necessarily fall on our ass and get back up. Or if we fall on our ass, we can do it at this level instead of this level. So being somebody that's coachable, being somebody that actually listens and believes. And this is where the honesty comes in and goes, got it. And so here's this piece that And the honesty, what that means to me is when you mentor me, because I think there's been times when we're mentoring each other.
Mm-hmm.
When you mentor me, I am not sitting here having an internal argument with you. When you are saying, well, try this or try this piece, or this is what I've learned through this, I'm not going, oh, well, that part's right. Well, that part's not right. I'm not having that internalized argument or debate. Maybe that's a better word. What I'm doing is fully taking in what you say or what any mentor would say to me and letting myself absorb that on virtually every level, on a cognitive level, on a internal sensate level, on a somatic level, on a intellectual level, and letting that information come in and sit. And then allowing myself to integrate that in my life. And some of it may fit, some of it may not fit, but I'm allowing myself to integrate it first before I make decisions about whether or not I want to use that information. Does that
What I
make sense?
heard, totally. What I heard was, um, it's about being, to be the good mentee, to be coachable means being able to be completely present
Yes.
and having your judgment filter turned off for that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep bringing things back to improv. Uh, if I am present and I'm listening to what you say, and I'm not judging or thinking what I want to say, or any of that stuff. So the committee's at rest.
Yes. Yes.
The committee is at
Exactly.
rest. We are now listening, and we're not judging or any of that. I'm listening because, um, ideally, you're also not trying to impress me as my mentor. You're truly
Correct.
trying to. So I don't. You're doing this out of love for me. You're freely giving to me,
I'm
and
freely
really
giving.
wanting me to help, and you desperately want me to hear this, or you wouldn't fucking be saying it. You're
Yes.
not wasting. Let's not waste anybody's time in the best form. In the
Mm-hmm.
ideal
Mm-hmm.
form of that. And so, by all due respect, I want to listen loudly to what you're saying, and then, in my particular instance, the way I learn is, I need to draw it so I can
Mm-hmm.
see it. And I've already said just a few minutes ago, I see it in my brain, and then I can
Mm-hmm.
react to it. And it's what I'll typically do is, even if I feel like I really got it, I will ask a clarifying question. Almost always. You probably hear that in people who've listened to the show
Mm-hmm.
will notice that I will almost always ask a clarifying question, because there's there's always another lens to look at something, or another set of words to use to, and what that does for me is it helps cement, because,
Right.
I echoed back. So what you were saying was, did I get that? Did I hear that right? Did I make the
Right.
logical connection? And then you can correct me right then, while it hasn't set, if you will. And then in my case, I'll show a drawing, and I said, did I get this part right?
Mm-hmm.
I do that. I do that all day,
Yeah,
every
you
day.
do that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And because then we can both look at it and say, yes, you made the logical connection. And actually, now that I see it, there's actually a little nuance here that you probably want to pay attention to. So you actually get a little bit
It
more
actually
juice out of
deepens
that
it more.
orange.
Yeah. You bet. So when that's happening for you, well, let me make a statement instead of ask a question. For that to happen the way that you're talking about, go being on either end, being a mentor or a mentee, that interaction has to happen without judgment.
100%.
How do you keep the judgment out?
Just be aware of it, I think. Just you have a little editor going. I mean, I don't know about you,
Little
but
guy sitting
I
here.
got a little camera. Yeah, I got a little camera of a watcher, right? Who's just
Mm-hmm.
kind of watching all the time, and you just kind of that's the watcher's job to judge, and oh, yeah, maybe that wasn't the right way. Maybe you can see if you can fix that. Maybe judge is the wrong word, but I think again that's sharpening the knife. It's you that level of awareness and knowing. I tend to be a little judgy. Now I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I but listener, just check yourself. Are you a little judgy? And if you know that, and you know in this situation, you need to check that at the door when you come in, which suggests to me that the level of trust and safety you need to have in that relationship is as high or higher than other kinds of relationships, because you in that particular situation need to be able to say, man, I fucked up, I made a bad choice, I didn't, I and be real honest about that and say, how could I have, how could I have done a better thing? Or that's a common question, is like,
How
how could
could
I have
I have?
solved that better? Right. I have a completely different question for you that's been on my mind for a while, from the
Okay.
beginning of it not being transactional. You've been a
Ah.
teacher your whole life. You've been a
Mm-hmm.
therapist your whole life. I've been a boss, you know, an entrepreneur, leader, a teacher, but not official in any of the. Well, maybe the boss. I was official. Um, how it, and you're giving advice, you're mentoring, you're doing all that when you're teaching. How do you, as a mentor, make that phase shift to this isn't a transaction? This is not. You're not my client. You're not my employee. You're not my student. We are, for all intents and purposes, I like to think of us as equals, so that I can, in terms of
Between you
status,
and me or mentor
the
mentee?
mentee,
Okay.
mentor mentee. And so, from a status point of view, we're of equal status, right? And then
Yes.
if you create that environment of it's a safe environment. There's a book I would recommend to people. I have it close.
Mm.
This book
Wow.
is spectacular.
Daniel Coyle.
Daniel Coyle. Um, and he says in the groups that they studied, the thing that made the group successful was that they were all safe. I'm
Yes.
safe to disagree. I'm safe to be vulnerable. It's safe. It's safe. The leader
Mm-hmm.
creates a
Mm-hmm.
safe space, and in the mentor mentee, the mentor is the leader, right? Even though
Right.
there's, I'm saying equal status, there's still a leader, and they need to create a safe space. And that, when you do that, I think you can dial up your coachability index, because
Big
now
time.
that person's going to feel like this person has my best interests at heart, and they're
That's
doing
the
this.
exact term
There
that
you go.
just went through my mind.
There you go.
Keep going.
And I have to say that um, interns are kind of like mentees, because they're not employees. They are, but they're
Right.
more like, I always took it as my role was the mentor. And I I can't tell you how much joy I have when I'm at a movie that has a lot of visual effects, typically a Marvel movie or a 3D movie, and to see the visual effects supervisor was someone who worked here in Santa Barbara at Wavefront. I'm just,
Right on.
I'm just like, oh man. Or a parent will see me in the grocery store and said, my high schooler was in your after school program and you said XYZ to them,
One. Hmm.
and that changed everything. I was just like, oh man, I just get chills.
So one is I totally get what you're talking about with that, and two is there a question with that you're like,
No,
what's the
I
difference?
don't think there's a question. I guess the question was, um, as the mentor, if your day job is coaching, counseling, consulting, all of that stuff, that's, and I think that's what we do. Um, what would be your advice to the person who needs to figure out how to check that at
Mentor.
the door? Because now I'm going to be a mentor, and it is different. It's, the Venn diagram of those two things are pretty overlapping, but that part that doesn't overlap. What would be your advice to someone who's
Well, the
mentoring?
biggest piece that I actually try and do is I try to be a mentor most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't switch off of that perspective when I'm working with someone therapeutically. I don't switch off of that
Oh,
perspective
okay.
when I'm
Interesting.
teaching. Um, I mean, I have taught a lot of people.
Hmm.
I do not, there's no part of me that holds like up here that, oh, Mark, I'm going to give you a grade when this is all over. That does not happen for me.
Hmm.
Um,
I have to say, and it could be because you've been an edge. There wasn't a, well, I mean, as a therapist, they actually pay a bill, um, but but it's not transactional. And in my point, if I am getting paid for advice or for to guidance, I'm getting paid for guidance. I'm I am kind of always measuring, doing a value measurement. Am I delivering value? Because there is definitely an exchange, because they're going to say, dang, I'm paying this guy a
mhm.
stupid amount of money. Am I getting the value from that? So whether I'm doing that math or not, pretty darn sure they're doing that
Somebody
math,
else might be.
right? Especially when they get the next bill. Do you want to keep working with me? Is the value there? And that goes away in the mentoring relationship. So I will confess to, I freely give until I'm getting paid to give, and then I'm measuring, and I'm making sure I'm over delivering. That's a thing for me, is over delivering.
Yeah, if they're
And
expecting a 5, you give
yeah,
them an 8.
yeah, yeah.
Well, here's how I break that out. When somebody is paying me, they are paying me for my time. They are not paying me for my knowledge, and they're not paying me for my caring. They're not paying me for my heart.
Hmm.
Um, my knowledge and my heart cannot be bought.
There you go.
Um, if and sometimes I go into this a little bit further, but that's sort of, it's a little bit of, if that happens, then it's a bit of prostitution.
Oh, wow.
So when somebody pays me X dollars an hour for an hour, X dollars for an hour of my time, they get everything I got.
Hmm. Yeah.
When I'm choosing to give somebody an hour of my time, they get everything I got. The difference is that if somebody is paying me for that hour of my time, they get to have input on when that is.
Fair enough. I want
That
to, I
that's what
want
they're
to,
buying.
this is going to be another conversation about the value of time. And that'll
Yeah.
come up, the value of time. Um, I want to finish with this one because I'm imagining the person's listening may have never had a mentor or has had several mentors with both ends of that spectrum. For the person who hasn't had one, understands the value of it, and they, in my life, I never sought them out. The universe put them in my path, and
Exactly.
I figured that out. Um, how about the person who's listening to this saying, "Man, I could use a mentor." What what do you think is the right way to go? I don't know the answer, so I'm very curious.
To find that,
Yeah, to go. It's like someone's listening, like, man, I could use someone like that in my life.
mm-hmm. a lot of that, a lot of a mentor relationship, I believe, begins with putting together a friendship, putting together. I mean, I think it's part of what
So it's
happens
someone
in
you already know.
many times, yes, because there's an underlying trust that gets built that is different.
Mm.
The way that it gets built is different. The trust isn't different, but the way that it gets built is different.
Well, we talked about this in one of our very earliest shows, and I reference this a lot. I have to tell you, is that we build that brick by brick over shared
Yes,
experiences, small
yes,
shared
yes, yes.
experiences. That's my good friend Dewey Freeman says. That's how we build trust. Speaking of my good friend Dewey Freeman, wow, that time just went. Do you know, time just go, just like that.
That was 3 minutes, wasn't it?
My good friend, till we meet again.
All right. And have a wonderful day and good luck with everything you're doing.